Hey everybody, Kevin here from ChangeWorks Interactive. Welcome back. I have a special guest that I'd like to introduce for every one of you because he provides outstanding community service. I want you to meet Nelson Borges. Nelson, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me, Kevin. This is great.
You're very welcome. Now let me tell you a little bit about Nelson. Now Nelson's the founder and CEO of the Capillary Wave Community for Men. And their reach now is in Burlington, and they also service Hamilton as well. And they're looking to expand, and we could talk about some of that as well. A little bit about Nelson. Nelson's the founder of the organization. They've been around since 2024, and they've done a lot of work since then. Nelson has led its growth, and get this for a stat. They started out with 5 guys when they first started in 2024, and now it's grown to something, Nelson, like 270 men?
271 as of today.
Oh, wow, congratulations.
Thank you.
That's great. We just, for example, my wife and I, we just attended an event. It was a fundraiser for Capillary Wave, and it was held at the Black Swan in Burlington. And I'll tell you, we had a blast. It was so much fun. What was your take on it, Nelson? How did everything play out?
Yeah, I've got a team that helps me out with grants and fundraising ideas, and they approached me with the idea of having comedians. There's a team of 3 of them, local great guys, and they said, hey, what do you think about this idea? And I loved it. So we ended up calling it Laughing Heels. Stand up for men's mental health, and we said, okay, let's approach Dave over there at the Black Swan. He's been a huge supporter of ours, along with his manager Colin and Tara upstairs, who set everything up. So they've got a wicked team over there. They let us use the space. We brought them some customers to fill their restaurant on a Tuesday night. So it all worked for everybody, and they've been huge supporters of ours, and I can't thank them enough.
Awesome. That's great. Let me go back to maybe the start of Capillary Wave, and that might get into your personal story a little bit, but let our listeners know just a little bit about how this all came about. What inspired you to get started with this organization and build it to where it is now?
Yeah, so I'm 53, and back in 2022, on a random Sunday, I was driving home from Fortino's, and I had what was now I know is a massive panic attack while I was driving. Came out of nowhere, as I thought at the time. That put me out of work for about 5 months. So the first couple of months, just completely bedridden. My whole system was out of whack, and I went to 12 different walk-in clinics, just trying to find one doctor that said, actually, this is what's wrong with you, right? I just didn't believe them. So read a book that someone had recommended, a friend from high school, and I read that thing in 2 days. And it was called From Panic to Power by Lucinda Bassett. And it was written in the 90s of all times, right? Yeah. And it applies so much today. So the great thing was, in reading that book, it was like I wrote it. So that resonated with me. I'm like, okay, I'm not going crazy, which is often one of the feelings we get when we're in that kind of mental space, that you're losing your mind. That's right. Very scary place to be. So I started learning. How to cope, coping skills, right? Going for walks and journaling was a big part of my journey back, right? And went back to work, and it was still a process. I'd still have my days, and it was really hard. Even driving, all of a sudden now became a challenge for me, like breaking out in cold sweats sometimes, just your body's just so out of whack, right? Yeah. And fast forward about I don't know if it was a year, I'm losing track of time now, but my faith is a big part of my life, and I went to church. There was a bulletin about a small prayer group, and I'm like, I'm going to go check that out. And I did, and it was just adults sitting around a table, talking about Scripture and how it applies to today's world, and it was just discussion. It was just talking. Yeah. So I left there, and I said, I wonder if guys want to talk about mental health. So I put a post in the Burlington Dads Facebook group, and we had 5 guys come out to the first meeting. We got a space from the city of Burlington for free. and things just, it was awkward at first, sure, but by the end of that first discussion, it was really good. And a lot of guys were thankful that they were able to just kind of release. And then things just kept progressing from there, like word spread.
Yeah, yeah, that's amazing. And I think if anybody's listening to this, I think that gives them hope, and that would inspire them to possibly reach out and get help. Why do you think, Nelson, there's been such a, maybe it's been a reluctance over the years for men to reach out, and they feel this stigma. And as therapists too, I often hear that, I'm gonna have that stiff upper lip, and I'm gonna solve this problem myself. Why do you think it's taken us so long, despite having some progress probably in the last few years? But why is there that stigma there with guys in particular?
I can speak to our generation.
Yeah.
We grew up watching Rambo and Arnold Schwarzenegger movies and these action heroes, and
Sure did, yeah.
not one of them was in a therapy session, in those movies. The first show that I remember that they introduced a therapist was Sopranos. Right?
Yeah, of course.
So Tony Soprano had a therapist.
That's right.
So we grew up that way. Our dads, most of our dads, didn't talk about mental health at home. You just didn't. It was named something else, or you got the blues, or for women it was the baby blues. But speaking on behalf of the men, is just we just did not have those conversations at home, at work, and at school. And the stigma's just, it's kind of like concrete that sets. The older the concrete, the harder it is. We were watching war movies typically, right? We just came off of, we're Generation X, where our parents were fighting in wars, and they came, and a lot of them came back, grandfathers even, never spoke about, I'm a big World War II historian, and I've watched a lot of documentaries, and one of the things that really catches me is these men, that they're now in their 80s, or whenever they filmed it, to a man they would say, I never talked about this with my family. And the second you mention one of their fallen soldiers, one of their buddies, they instantly begin to cry. And then you're holding that in for like 50 years. So those were our role models in a sense. Great guys, they didn't know any better. But now we know better.
Right. You get a lot of information, and of course, if men decide they're going to share with other men, and they're sitting around the table, of course it's going to be confidential. And I've sit in on some of those sessions with you, Nelson. I know that's one of your biggest things, is that what's said in the room stays in the room. And what have you heard? What have you heard from some of the guys that would be, maybe even a warning sign that something's wrong? Maybe maybe they say something directly, or maybe it's a little bit more covert. But what's some warning signs that you would pick up on to say, hey, that's not, let's talk about that, because that's important.
Sure. During the conversations, if someone says, sorry, I didn't mean to cry, or sorry, I didn't mean to say that, out loud, kind of thing. In conversations, I can't give specific examples per se, but there's definitely words or language that's used that someone says, I was thinking about, ending it. Like, what's the point? Those kind of self-defeating kind of phrases, right? I don't know why I'm here. This isn't worth it. A lot of that kind of language is usually the trigger. I watch people's body language, how they respond to different topics that we talk about. Some guys go quieter, and for some, it comes out in anger, right? Guys are really good at dealing with anger. And how do we usually deal with anger? It's typically either, a substance, be it, alcohol or drugs, to kind of numb out the pain, or just kind of numb out the brain from thinking. But there's quite a few signs when we're talking about at home. because a lot of parents will say, I didn't notice a change. But if they rewind the tape and someone says, here, 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 then they're like, oh, okay, right? And that's just all about education, right? Mental health is a pendulum, right? We have good days or bad days, but, when you start stacking bad days for a long period of time, you kind of go into the red.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. We were just having a recent conversation about how do we create culture, and we were talking about COVID and post COVID, and I was telling you about the space that I work in, and that's a tricky one, right? Like about creating culture and positive culture. How do you guys do that at Capillary Wave? How do you create a safe, positive culture so that new guys feel comfortable, joining the group, or the guys that have been there continue to be there and provide maybe leadership for some of the other guys that are in there?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Once in a while, I'll ask good questions.
Yeah, that's what I hear.
Yeah.
That's the rumor,
Yeah.
right? Excuse me. With respect to culture, like when we have, there's always new guys that come to the table. We have in-person support groups on Mondays and Wednesdays. So there will always be a new person or two that start on a Monday or the Wednesday. What we do is, I give the introduction, what Capillary is, all the resources that we offer, and then we go around the table. So we call them laps. So our first lap is everyone has 1 minute to say what brought them to the table. And then when it gets to the first timers or the newbies, we can pass them and keeps going, and then circle back to them. So by that time, when they hear all the different challenges that the people at that table face, I would say 9.5 out of 10 guys open up right away. They're saying, this is what brought me here, this is what I'm going through. And oftentimes you'll hear, they'll be like, when I came here, I was said, I'm not going to talk, I'm just going to listen. And all of them talk.
It's pretty powerful, isn't it, when somebody across the table is sharing something very sensitive? It's very difficult for you not to feel some emotion or some empathy for that person, or not contribute to that as well.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And I think as a group, the longer we've gone, and we have our regulars, the guys that don't miss a Monday or don't miss a Wednesday, and they're huge support for myself personally, because they carry the conversation and they help out someone who's really stuck, right? So, for example, the second lap we take around the table is, what was a low light, what was a highlight for your week, and what did you do? And the advice that we share, the support that we give, we never say, hey, Kevin, you should do this or you should do that. What we say is, hey, listen, man, I went through the same thing. This is what I did, and it helped me, right? It's not group therapy, but it is very therapeutic.
Yeah, I would agree with that 100%. We were talking about culture a little earlier, and I think there's a lot of different pathways to that, to create positive culture. Maybe, Nelson, you just to get your opinion on what role does different groups in society play with that? For example, what role would schools have in addressing men's mental health, for example? Are there different segments of our population that could help, even women's groups or sports teams? How might those different parts of our community help men that are struggling?
I think it begins with empathy, that everyone has their own story, whether you're coming into school or where you're coming into work. Organizations, be it schools, corporations, what have you, it's creating a truly open door, but not just an open door, open everything, right? Where we say, hey, listen, we have all the support here. We talk about things like that, right? We talk about how our people are doing mentally. One of the biggest things that I've learned along my journey is the holistic health angle, where mental health is just one of the four, right? We have physical, emotional, and spiritual. And I would argue that if you're lacking in one sufficiently, that's going to impact your mental health. You know, so with schools in the age groups, that's a little bit different because those teenagers are still developing and building up their self-esteem, their confidence, and all the stuff that comes with high school, right?
Sure.
High school seems at the time when you're in it that it's going to last forever, and
That's a strange animal.
it is,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And you come out different.
Yeah.
You come out the other side different.
Yeah.
But it has to be taught from the top down in terms of, hey, this is what we want our group to be. This is what we want our space to feel like, right? At work, it's very, very hard. The stigma at work is still very strong. Where do you feel comfortable to tell your manager that you're not doing so good mentally? We're not training the managers. We're not training the managers how to deal with moderate to severe mental health issues, right? So with that being said, in my travels in this past couple of years, I've met some, and they're part of Capillary, amazing healthcare practitioners, and each have their area of specialty. So I've created what's called the Capillary's Holistic Education Crew. And that is literally what we're doing. We want to go into boardrooms, classrooms, community. We want to inspire hearts and minds. We want to open up the conversation about all 4 pillars of holistic health. And the more you talk about something, the less power you give to those stigmas.
Yeah. That's awesome. If there's somebody right now, Nelson, that's listening to this recording, and they're kind of on the fence about getting some help, maybe even specifically getting some help at Capillary, what advice would you give them about what a good positive next step for them might be?
Make the call.
Yeah, easy?
Send the email.
Yeah.
Just write down what you're feeling, send it. Right? Those emails come to me directly. Those emails aren't going to get posted on social media or anything like that. And I reach back to you within, sometimes it's within the hour, like depending like what I'm doing at that particular moment. But the first step is just send that email, make that phone call. I've had plenty of conversations with guys who call me. They're sitting in their cars, right? And they're like, I just can't get out of this car. And I'm like, let's talk. And they're like, are you sure? And I'm like, yeah, right, here's my number, and we start talking, and I start listening, right? And as soon as we call it, well, I'll stick with your question because I tend to ramble, so please.
We'll rein you in a little bit if that's the case.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
The toughest step is I used to think that the toughest step was the first step in terms of just reaching out, saying, hey, I need help. It's a very brave step. It's an awesome step. But step 2 is just as or even more important than step 1, and that is, now what? Now that I've reached out, now that I put my vulnerability out there, right, am I going to go to that meeting? Like, you got to get in the car, or you got to start walking, or however you're going to get there. You got to take that action, right? And healing comes with action, right? And you don't know it until you're in it, right? I often say, like, the magic that you're looking for is in the work that you're avoiding. And I can't say it any other way. Like, I heard on a podcast, I can't quote, I'm terrible at quoting names on the, it's not my quote, but it stuck with me. And that's it. Like, in the doing is the healing.
Yeah.
And there's no other way around that.
Where do you see, Nelson, the whole organization going? Like, if we're gonna wrap up, our time together today, and I was gonna ask you about, okay, what's your vision of where this is going to go? What would you be able to tell me, tell our listeners about, where is this going?
Yeah. Well, back in May, we launched Capillary Wave Community for Women. There's already over 100 women that are registered there. So they're basically taking the blueprint, that we started with the men's, and they're running with it. Nadine Perry, she's our executive director. My wife Tanya, she coordinates everything, right, between the two different groups. We're going to be looking at going into Capillary for youth, so the 18 to 24-year-old. And the spots that I don't want to overextend, right, which is I tend to, right? So I just had a conversation this morning with an organization that they're really good at small children, like kids under 12, right? So we're going to partner with organizations like that. So someone can call Capillary and say, hey, I need help with this or with that. We're going to have, if we can't do it, we have partnerships that will absolutely be able to do it. So it's kind of like it's, a Google search that, blah, 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 it has all those results. I want to be the Google search that is like, we got you, right? That's the best way I can say what my vision is for it. We'll continue to do the workshops that we do, the therapy that we offer, so nobody gets left behind. We offer free therapy or compassionate therapy for the guys who simply can't afford it, like they don't have the money. But we also have sliding scale for the guys who do have something, and the guys who do have insurance through their work. Hey, here's an awesome team of therapists that offer a variety of modalities. So.
Oh, awesome! That's great. That's great. Everybody, today we've been talking to Nelson Borges, who is the CEO and the founder of Capillary Wave in Burlington, Hamilton, and who knows where else they're going to extend to. Nelson, thanks so much for joining us today, and continue on doing the work that you do. Thanks so much.
No, thank you.